Today we are going to take a look at the interaction between a Metaspex backend and a database. I have chosen Couchbase. We support as well MongoDB, so you see the Couchbase console on the top right of the screen. On the left you see, as usual, an empty text editor. I'm going to develop everything in front of you. And on the bottom right you see my terminal. It's there that I'm going to compile and that I'm going to exercise the web service. So without further ado, I'm going to start. I'm going to start by defining an ontology. It's going to be a very simple ontology. Let's define a contact. So a contact is a document. I am already using a Metaspex construct, which is a root, which is actually saying that the contact type is going to be the root of a document which will persist in the database. So I'm going to include that abstraction. Let's add a few things inside the contact that will persist in the database. So let's use a slot, type string, first name. So let's include this abstraction as well. So what will persist if we use Couchbase is a JSON document, and the key corresponding to the first name will be fn, and I just specified it here. Let's put a middle name and the last name. Okay, we have 3. And let's add one more thing, which is a sub-object inside this document. So we describe this with own. So it means that the information I put here is some information that we will find in the same document as the contact. So it's a relationship, and own relationships describe relationships between one object and another, and it means that both of them are going to end up in the same document. We have other types of relationships. We have links, and links allow to create like URLs between documents or within documents. Let's use a type that we already have in Metaspex, and we find it here. And it is a canned type. I could use one of mine that I describe here, but why not show that we can reuse types in an ontology? And this is something that you don't see very frequently today, and that's one of the unique things that Metaspex proposes. You can capitalize upon entire ontologies or simply one type here that you have already defined or that Metaspex defined for you. So the address is coming with everything an address usually comes with, and I don't have to define it here. Let me do some magic. I'm not going to comment what I'm doing here, for the sake of time. I'm mentioning here all the data that my type contains. Let's put a public section, a private section, and here a constructor. Let's do something simple. I'm just going to be able to create a contact with the first name and the last name, giving no middle name and no address. So the middle name has nothing. Last name has the argument, and the address has nothing because the constructor is not taking it. We could do it. It's just in the sake of time that I want to do this. Okay. Now I am ready to define a web service. So it will be a web service that creates a new contact and makes it persist inside Couchbase. So defining a global variable. It's a service, so I'm going to include include the service abstraction proposed by Metaspex. Here we have the web service endpoint. Let's call it contact create. And I pass it a lambda. So typically it's done this way, and I'm going to populate the argument. So in here, I'm going to put what the web service is supposed to expect as an input when a client is going to invoke the web service. So I need to define here a payload. Let's do it. So here an element is something which is not the root of a document, but something which is within a document. Include it. And it contains 2 slots. And the first name, here note that I'm using a longer tag because that's what I want. So the JSON object I will send from the client will bear keys, which are first name and last name. Doing some magic. Listing everything I have. Leave the public section. Forgot to close the parentheses. Okay. Okay. So the web service is going to receive a strongly typed object, which is of type contact create payload. Let's call it CCP. The first thing I need to do is to connect to a database. So I'm going to use an abstraction called the database connector. I pass it the name of the database I want to connect to. Let's include it. I realize I forgot to include the own relationship abstraction. Let's fix this. That way, hopefully, we won't have any compilation error. And now here, I need to create a new contact object, a new contact document. So this is done doing this. I pass it, the connector, to the database. And this is instructing Metaspex to store that contact, newly created contact, in the database corresponding to the connector I pass. Then I need to specify the first argument of the constructor we just defined. The second. Okay, so I have such a document. I need to ask myself now, what do I return when this web service is finished? I'm going to return the unique ID of the document. I obtain it through this, and I need to return something here that takes this ID and returns a properly formed JSON reply. Hopefully for me, this already exists. And Metaspex proposes it. I could define it. It's not extremely complicated, but it's quite handy to have it. And now I build it and I return it. Let's try compiling this. Okay, I'm lucky. I didn't make any typing error. So now we have the module. It is 10 megs. I'm going to install it in Nginx. Okay, so now I have my module. It contains the web service. I can now invoke my web service. I'm going to use the curl utility. I'm going to use my web service endpoint, contact create, and I'm going to pass it a JSON object. I specify that it should contain a first name, a last name, and I should be ready. Okay, so I got my document created. I'm going to refresh my console, and I see that my document has been created. The unique ID corresponds to the one I just created, and inside the database, I see the first name and the last name that I specified. I can time this. Let's create more of me. So here we used 82,000 nanoseconds, and in real time we used 0.2 millisecond. And that includes the work inside the database. So you see that it is pretty quick. If we go back to the source code, we notice that we didn't delete any memory. This is because Metaspex does this automatically for you, making the code extremely safe. But not only this, we didn't use any SQL, we didn't use any database API, and there is no manipulation of JSON anywhere, although the web service took a JSON object, replied a JSON object, and persisted the information as a JSON document inside Couchbase. This is because Metaspex operates at a very high level of abstraction, and you don't need to specify all these things. So what if we wanted to store the exact same document inside MongoDB? Then we wouldn't store a JSON document, we would technically store a Bison document, and Metaspex would know how to do this. Actually, it would be the very same code, but not just this, it would be the very same binary. So the one we just compiled is capable of persisting the same document in MongoDB, and this is specified in the configuration file. And inside the configuration file, you see now the missing link between the source code, which contained the database connector, if you remembered, and demo. So we specified that the demo database is a Couchbase database. I give here my credentials. If I had defined it using this, it would be a CouchDB database. And if I had specified this, it would be a MongoDB database. So I could, for instance, change this specification and comment this out and uncomment this, restart my backend, and then it would store everything inside MongoDB. So I hope it was interesting. It was very quick. We do many, many more things. Hopefully we'll be able to show you this in subsequent videos. Thank you.